Connected, the complete guide to building a network of people who support you, written and narrated by MSE Boost. The most accomplished people you admire share a secret they rarely talk about. Behind closed doors, away from the spotlight, every single person who has built something meaningful did so with help. Not because they were weak, not because they lacked talent or drive. They succeeded because they understood something fundamental about how life actually works. Human beings are not designed to thrive in isolation. This truth cuts against everything modern culture teaches. Self-reliance gets celebrated. Independence gets rewarded. The lone genius working late into the night makes for a better story than a group of people lifting each other up over months and years. But the story is a lie. A comfortable fiction that keeps people stuck, struggling, and wondering why everything feels so hard. Chapter 1. Why no one succeeds alone. Here is what nobody tells you about support networks. They are not a nice bonus for people who get lucky with friendships. They are infrastructure. They function like roads and bridges in a city, invisible when they work, catastrophic when they don't exist. The person who builds a strong network of supportive people gains access to resources, information, encouragement, and opportunities that the isolated person simply cannot reach, no matter how talented or hardworking they might be. And here is the part that changes everything. Building this kind of network is a skill. It can be learned, practiced, and improved by anyone willing to put in the effort. The pages ahead will show you exactly how to do it. Most people misunderstand what a support network actually means. They hear the term and think of networking events where strangers exchange business cards under fluorescent lights. They think of forced conversations at industry mixers or awkward LinkedIn messages from people they barely know. This version of networking feels transactional, exhausting, and fake, because it is. A genuine support network operates on completely different principles. It consists of real relationships with people who actually care about your well-being and want to see you succeed. These are individuals who will answer the phone when things fall apart, who will share honest observations when you're headed in the wrong direction, and who will celebrate your wins without a hint of jealousy. They exist at different levels of closeness. Some are intimate confidants, others are trusted advisors, and still others are friendly acquaintances who provide specific types of help when needed. The structure matters more than most people realize. A support network is not just a random collection of nice people. It serves specific functions, and gaps in those functions create real problems. Someone might have wonderful friends who provide emotional comfort, but lack anyone who can give career guidance. Another person might know plenty of successful professionals, but have no one to call during a personal crisis. These imbalances leave people vulnerable in predictable ways. Think about the different situations where support becomes essential. Major decisions require input from people who understand your values and circumstances. Professional challenges demand advice from those who have faced similar obstacles. Personal difficulties call for compassion from individuals who genuinely know you. Creative projects benefit from honest reactions before you share them with the world. Health struggles need people who will show up practically, not just offer thoughts and prayers from a distance. Each of these situations requires a different type of person, and no single relationship can provide everything. The friend who listens beautifully when you're upset might give terrible business advice. The mentor who guides your career might feel awkward discussing your personal life. A healthy support network includes multiple people serving different roles, which means building it requires intentional effort across several fronts. The costs of going without this support are staggering, though they often remain invisible until something breaks. Isolated people make worse decisions because they lack outside perspectives to challenge their thinking. They recover more slowly from setbacks because they carry the entire emotional weight alone. They miss opportunities because information travels through relationships, and they have too few connections to hear about what's available. They burn out faster because they never learn to ask for help or delegate when overwhelmed. Research consistently shows that social isolation ranks among the most damaging factors for both mental and physical health. Loneliness affects the body like smoking 15 cigarettes a day. People without strong social ties experience higher rates of depression, anxiety, heart disease, and cognitive decline. The effects compound over time. Isolation breeds more isolation as people lose the social skills and confidence needed to form new connections. Beyond health, isolation limits achievement in measurable ways. Studies of successful entrepreneurs reveal that access to mentors and supportive peers predicts outcomes better than individual intelligence or initial resources. Scientists who collaborate produce more influential work than those who publish alone. Artists who participate in creative communities develop faster than those who practice in solitude. The pattern repeats across every field. Connection accelerates growth, while isolation slows it down. None of this means that quiet time lacks value, or that introverts need to become social butterflies. Solitude serves important purposes: reflection, deep work, and recovery. All require time alone. The goal is not constant social activity, but rather having reliable access to support when support is needed. A strong network sits quietly in the background during ordinary times and activates powerfully during critical moments. So why do so many people end up without adequate support? Several factors contribute to this modern epidemic of disconnection. Geographic mobility scatters families and childhood friends across distant cities. Long working hours leave little energy for maintaining relationships. Digital communication creates the illusion of connection without delivering its substance. Cultural messages glorifying independence make asking for help feel like weakness. And perhaps most significantly, nobody teaches the specific skills required to build and maintain supportive relationships. Schools teach mathematics and history, but offer nothing on how to form meaningful connections with other human beings. Parents model their own approaches, healthy or dysfunctional, without explicit instruction. Young adults enter the world expected to somehow figure out how to build the relationships that will sustain them through decades of challenges and transitions. Most people muddle through with whatever instincts and habits they developed by accident, never realizing that better approaches exist. This book exists to fill that gap. The chapters ahead will give you a complete education in building, maintaining, and strengthening your support network. You will learn to identify exactly what types of support you currently have and which ones are missing. You will discover where to find people worth investing in and how to recognize the qualities that make someone a good candidate for your inner circle. You will gain specific language for starting conversations that lead to real connection and concrete methods for deepening relationships over time. You will understand how to maintain your network without it feeling like a burden and how to handle the inevitable changes that occur as people's lives evolve. The information presented here comes from a practical perspective rather than a theoretical one. Every strategy has been tested in real-world conditions. The focus stays on actions you can take immediately rather than abstract concepts you need to ponder. By the time you finish reading, you will possess a clear blueprint for creating the supportive community you deserve. But knowing what to do means little without understanding where you currently stand. Before moving forward, take an honest look at your existing support situation. Grab a piece of paper or open a notes app on your phone. Write down the names of people you could call at 2 a.m. if you faced a genuine emergency, not just people who would technically answer, but those who would respond with real concern and offer actual help. Count them. For most people, this number lands somewhere between 0 and 3. Now write down the names of people who would give you honest opinions about an important decision, even if those opinions might hurt your feelings. People who care enough about you to risk temporary discomfort for your long-term benefit. Count these names too. Next, list anyone who has achieved something you want to achieve and who makes themselves available to share what they learned. Mentors, advisors, or simply people a few steps ahead on a path you want to walk. How many names appear? Add the people who actively hold you accountable to your goals and commitments. Not people who would do it if asked, but those who currently check in on your progress and call you out when you slack off. This list tends to be the shortest for most readers. Look at these 4 lists together. Notice the gaps. Notice which categories overflow and which sit nearly empty. Notice whether the same few names appear across multiple lists, indicating an over-reliance on a small number of people. This snapshot reveals your current support infrastructure with uncomfortable clarity. The gaps you see are not character flaws. They're simply the result of never having learned how to build these specific types of relationships. Every missing name represents a skill you can develop and a connection you can form. The emptiness on those lists is temporary. It shows you exactly where to focus your energy as you work through the material ahead. Most people who complete this exercise experience a mix of emotions. Some feel sadness at recognizing how thin their support actually is. Others feel relief at finally naming a problem they sensed but couldn't articulate. Many feel motivated to take immediate action, which is exactly the right response. That motivation will serve you well in the chapters to come. What matters now is accepting the truth about your current situation without judgment and committing to building something better. The skills required are learnable. The relationships are formable. The support you need exists out there in the world, waiting to be discovered and developed. Your only job at this moment is to stay open to learning a new way of approaching connection and to trust that consistent effort will produce results. People transform their support networks all the time. Individuals who spent years feeling isolated and overwhelmed have built thriving communities around themselves within months of applying the right strategies. The lonely have become connected. The struggling have become supported. The stuck have become mobile. These transformations happen not through luck or personality changes, but through the systematic application of specific techniques. You picked up this book because something about your current situation isn't working. Maybe you feel alone in facing challenges that would be easier with help. Maybe you watch others succeed with support you don't have. Maybe you simply sense that life could feel less heavy if you weren't carrying everything yourself. Whatever brought you here, the dissatisfaction you feel is actually a gift. It provides the energy needed to build something new. The chapters ahead will ask you to step outside your comfort zone. You will need to initiate conversations with new people, express needs you might prefer to hide, and invest time in relationships that don't offer immediate returns. None of this is easy, but all of it is worthwhile. The temporary discomfort of building new connections pales compared to the chronic pain of going through life without adequate support. Strong relationships form the foundation of a good life. They buffer against stress, multiply opportunities, accelerate growth, and make the hard times survivable. A person with a solid support network faces the same challenges as everyone else, but meets them with resources that isolated individuals simply don't possess. Building that network is among the highest leverage investments anyone can make in their own well-being and success. The work begins now. Your current support situation, whatever it looks like, serves as the starting point rather than the final destination. Every connection you build from this day forward adds to your infrastructure. Every relationship you strengthen increases your capacity to weather storms and seize opportunities. Every person who joins your network makes the next person easier to find. Turn the page, ready to learn. The practical instruction starts immediately in the next chapter, where you will discover the 5 distinct types of support every person needs and how to identify which ones your current network provides and which remain dangerously absent. That clarity will guide every action you take throughout the rest of this book and beyond. You don't have to figure this out alone. That's precisely the point. And by the time you finish reading, you never will again. Chapter 2. The 5 types of support every person needs. Most people think about support as a single category. Someone either supports you or they don't. A person is either in your corner or they're not. This binary thinking creates massive blind spots that leave even well-connected individuals feeling strangely unsupported despite having plenty of people around them. Support actually breaks down into 5 distinct categories, each serving a completely different function in your life. Missing even one category creates specific problems that no amount of the other 4 can solve. The friend who listens beautifully to your frustrations cannot replace the mentor who shows you how to advance your career. The accountability partner who keeps you on track with your goals cannot fill the role of someone who helps you move apartments or watches your kids during an emergency. Understanding these 5 categories transforms how you think about relationships. Suddenly, the vague sense that something is missing becomes a specific diagnosis. The feeling of being unsupported despite having friends turns into a clear recognition that you have plenty of emotional support but zero practical help. This clarity allows you to build intentionally rather than randomly hoping the right people show up in your life. The 5 types of support are emotional, informational, practical, accountability, and aspirational. Each type answers a different question and addresses a different need. Emotional support answers the question, who will be there for me when things get hard? Informational support answers, who can help me figure things out? Practical support answers, who will actually help me get things done? Accountability support answers, who will keep me honest about my commitments? Aspirational support answers, who has already achieved what I'm working toward? Let's examine each type in depth so you can identify where your network currently excels and where it falls short. Emotional support forms the foundation of feeling genuinely cared for. People who provide emotional support listen without judgment when you need to process difficult experiences. They offer comfort during painful times. They celebrate your wins with authentic enthusiasm. They make you feel seen, heard, and valued as a human being rather than just as someone who performs certain roles or provides certain benefits. The markers of strong emotional support are straightforward. Can you call this person when you're upset and trust they will listen? Do they ask follow-up questions about things you mentioned previously, showing they actually absorbed what you shared? Do they express genuine happiness when good things happen to you without any undercurrent of envy or competition? Do conversations with them leave you feeling lighter rather than drained? Emotional supporters come in different intensities. Your innermost circle might include just 2 or 3 people with whom you can share anything. Your deepest fears, your most embarrassing moments, your secret dreams that feel too fragile to speak aloud. A slightly wider circle holds people you trust with significant emotional content, but perhaps not your most vulnerable material. Even casual friendships can provide light emotional support through simple kindness and positive interactions. The absence of emotional support creates a specific kind of suffering. People without it feel fundamentally alone, even when surrounded by others. They carry the full weight of their emotional experiences internally, which leads to rumination, anxiety, and depression. They may achieve external success but find it hollow because no one truly knows them well enough to appreciate what they've accomplished. The loneliness of having no emotional support differs from other forms of isolation it strikes at the basic human need to be known and accepted. Informational support serves an entirely different function. People who provide this type of support help you make better decisions by sharing knowledge, perspectives, and advice. They possess expertise or experience that you lack, and they willingly share it when you face situations where their input would prove valuable. Strong informational supporters display certain characteristics. They give advice based on actual knowledge rather than speculation. They acknowledge the limits of what they know instead of pretending expertise they don't have. They tailor their guidance to your specific situation rather than offering generic recommendations. They respect your autonomy to make your own choices, even when those choices differ from what they suggested. The range of informational support extends broadly. Career advice from someone in your industry counts. Financial guidance from a friend who understands investing counts. Recommendations for doctors, contractors, or other service providers count. Input on major life decisions from people who have faced similar crossroads counts. Even opinions about which laptop to buy or which neighborhood to move to fall into this category. People lacking informational support make decisions in the dark. They reinvent wheels that others have already perfected. They repeat mistakes that wiser guidance would have prevented. They miss opportunities because no one told them such opportunities existed. The knowledge gap compounds over time. Each poor decision leads to situations that require even more information to handle well, creating a downward spiral of increasingly uninformed choices. Practical support involves tangible assistance with tasks and logistics. People who provide practical support actually do things for you. They help you move, drive you to the airport, watch your children, bring meals when you're sick, assist with home repairs, or lend you equipment you need. Their support shows up as action rather than words. Identifying practical supporters requires looking at behavior rather than sentiment. Plenty of people will say they're happy to help, but practical supporters actually follow through. They show up when they commit to showing up. They offer specific assistance rather than vague availability. They recognize when you need help, even when you haven't asked. The depth of practical support varies by relationship closeness. Acquaintances might lend you a tool or recommend a reliable mechanic. Closer connections might spend a Saturday helping you paint your living room. Your innermost circle will drop their own plans during emergencies to provide whatever physical assistance you need. Without practical support, every logistical challenge becomes exponentially harder. Tasks that would take 30 minutes with help consume entire weekends alone. Emergencies that would be manageable with assistance become catastrophic without it. The person lacking practical support must either pay for services others receive free from their networks or simply go without. Over time, this drains both financial resources and energy, leaving less capacity for everything else. Accountability support keeps you honest about your commitments and pushes you towards your stated goals. People who provide this type of support check in on your progress, call you out when you make excuses, and refuse to accept less than what you're capable of delivering. Their expectations create external pressure that supplements your internal motivation. Effective accountability supporters share certain traits. They take your goals seriously even when you start to waver. They ask specific questions about concrete progress rather than accepting vague reassurances. They distinguish between legitimate obstacles and comfortable avoidance. They hold you to standards you set for yourself without imposing their own agenda on your life. Accountability relationships work best with clear agreements. The person needs to know exactly what you're trying to accomplish, what milestones you're aiming for, and what kind of support helps versus hinders. Some people want gentle encouragement, while others need blunt confrontation. Some want daily check-ins, while others prefer weekly reviews. Effective accountability requires matching the approach to what actually motivates you. The gap left by missing accountability support shows up as unrealized potential. Goals get set and abandoned. Resolutions fade within weeks. Projects stall at 60% completion. The person knows what they want to achieve, but cannot sustain the effort required to get there. External deadlines from work or school create temporary pressure, but personal ambitions receive no such structure and therefore languish indefinitely. Aspirational support comes from people who have already traveled paths you want to walk. These individuals provide proof that your goals are achievable, specific guidance based on direct experience, and encouragement rooted in genuine understanding of what the work requires. Their success demonstrates possibility, while their willingness to share accelerates your own progress. True aspirational supporters offer more than just an example to admire from afar. They engage with you personally. They answer questions about how they achieved what they achieved. They share not just their highlight reel, but the struggles, failures, and lessons that shape their advancement. They remember what the earlier stages felt like and offer relevant guidance for where you currently stand. Finding aspirational supporters requires looking for people a few stages ahead, rather than those at the pinnacle of success. Someone who reached your goal 5 years ago often provides more useful guidance than someone who achieved it 30 years ago. Conditions change. Memory fades. The person slightly ahead of you remembers the specific challenges you currently face because they tackled those same challenges recently. Missing aspirational support leaves people unsure whether their goals are even realistic. They lack role models who prove achievement is possible for someone like them. They make avoidable mistakes because no one warned them about common pitfalls. They feel isolated in their ambitions, wondering if they're crazy for wanting what they want. The absence creates both strategic disadvantage and psychological doubt. Now that you understand all 5 types, the real work begins. Honestly assessing which types your current network provides and which remain absent or underdeveloped. Pull out the lists you made during the previous chapter. Look at the names you wrote down. Categorize each person by the primary type of support they provide. Some people might appear in multiple categories, which indicates particularly valuable relationships. Others might fit only one category clearly, which is completely normal and not a problem. The goal is clarity about what you have, not judgment about specific relationships. After categorizing, examine what emerges. Which categories contain multiple names? Those represent your areas of strength. Which categories hold few names or none at all? Those reveal your vulnerabilities. Be honest about this assessment. The temptation exists to give people credit for support they theoretically could provide rather than support they actually deliver. Your sister might be capable of providing accountability support, but if she's never actually held you accountable to anything, she doesn't belong in that category yet. Your colleague might have relevant career experience, but if they've never shared useful informational guidance, they don't count as an informational supporter currently. Common patterns appear when people complete this exercise. Many discover strong emotional support but weak accountability. They have friends who comfort them, but no one who pushes them. Others find plenty of informational sources, but minimal practical help. They know who to ask for advice, but have no one to assist with actual tasks. Some maintain good practical and accountability support through professional relationships, but lack deeper emotional connections. Every combination of strengths and weaknesses shows up across different people. Your specific pattern matters because it determines what you need to build. Someone drowning in emotional support but starving for accountability faces different work than someone with the opposite imbalance. The strategies for finding aspirational supporters differ from strategies for developing practical help networks. Knowing your gaps allows targeted action rather than random relationship building. The imbalances you identify likely explain frustrations you've experienced but couldn't fully articulate. That nagging sense of loneliness despite having friends might stem from relationships that lack emotional depth. The repeated failure to follow through on personal goals might trace back to absent accountability. The feeling of making the same mistakes over and over might result from insufficient informational support. Matching symptoms to missing support types transforms vague dissatisfaction into actionable diagnosis. Multiple types of support sometimes come from single relationships, and this concentration creates both benefits and risks. A spouse or best friend who provides emotional, informational, practical, and accountability support represents an incredible asset. But depending too heavily on one person for multiple support functions leaves you dangerously exposed if that relationship changes. The person might become unavailable due to their own life circumstances. The relationship might end. Conflict in one area might disrupt support in all areas simultaneously. Distributing support across multiple relationships creates resilience. Losing one connection hurts, but doesn't collapse your entire infrastructure. Conflict with one supporter doesn't strip you of all support simultaneously. Different people bring different strengths, so diversification often improves quality along with stability. The types of support also interact with each other in important ways. Accountability becomes more effective when combined with emotional support. You're more likely to accept tough feedback from someone who clearly cares about you. Informational guidance lands better when delivered by aspirational supporters who have credibility from their own achievements. Practical help feels less transactional when it comes from people who also provide emotional connection. Building multiple types of support with the same person often strengthens all types simultaneously. Consider also how your support needs shift across life phases and circumstances. A career transition increases the importance of informational and aspirational support. A health crisis elevates practical and emotional needs. Launching a major project demands more accountability. The birth of a child reshapes everything. Periodic reassessment keeps your network building efforts aligned with your current reality rather than outdated priorities. Your capacity to provide support matters alongside your need to receive it. Relationships that flow only in one direction eventually exhaust the giver and create uncomfortable dynamics for the receiver. Thinking about what types of support you can offer others helps you show up as a valuable member of their networks, which naturally strengthens the bonds you share. The best support relationships involve mutual exchange, even if the specific types exchanged differ between the two people. Take a few minutes now to complete this categorization exercise with full honesty. Write each person's name under the support type or types they actually provide. Notice where names cluster and where blank space stares back at you. Resist the urge to fill gaps with aspirational categorizations about what people could provide if asked. Deal with reality as it currently exists. The gaps you identify become your building priorities. The chapters ahead will show you where to find people who provide each type of support and how to develop relationships that deliver what you're missing. But that work requires clear sight about where you're starting from. Without honest assessment, you'll build randomly and end up with the same imbalances you started with, just with more people involved. Knowing exactly what your network lacks changes everything about how you approach new connections and existing relationships. The vague goal of meeting more people becomes the specific goal of finding accountability partners or developing emotional depth with existing friends. The general desire for better relationships becomes a targeted effort to cultivate particular types of support that your current circumstances demand. Every interaction carries new meaning when you understand what function different relationships serve. Your network is not broken. It simply has structure you can now see clearly, with strengths you can leverage and gaps you can fill. The assessment you just completed provides a map for everything that follows. Chapter 3. Where supportive people actually are. Knowing what types of support you need means nothing if you can't find people who provide it. Most individuals who struggle with thin networks don't lack social skills or likability. They simply spend their time in places where meaningful connections rarely form. They wait for supportive relationships to appear spontaneously while doing nothing to increase the odds of such appearances. This passive approach fails almost universally. Supportive people cluster in predictable locations and situations. They show up where shared interests create natural conversation starters. They gather where helping others is part of the culture. They appear where repeated interaction allows relationships to develop gradually over time. Finding them requires putting yourself in these environments consistently, rather than hoping fate delivers the right people to your doorstep. The difference between people with strong networks and people without them often comes down to this single factor: where they spend their discretionary time. Every hour you invest in environments rich with potential supporters multiplies your chances of forming valuable connections. Every hour spent in isolation or among people unlikely to become genuine supporters represents a missed opportunity. The math compounds over months and years until the gap between networked and isolated individuals becomes enormous. Understanding which environments produce meaningful connections and which merely create the illusion of social activity gives you a massive advantage in building the support structure you need. Physical spaces where people pursue shared activities generate connections more reliably than almost any other context. Classes, workshops, recreational leagues, volunteer organizations, religious communities, hobby groups, professional associations, and community organizations all share a critical feature. They bring together people with at least one thing in common and provide repeated exposure over extended periods. The repeated exposure matters tremendously. Psychological studies consistently show that familiarity breeds liking. Seeing the same faces week after week creates comfort that eventually opens the door to deeper interaction. The person you barely noticed during your first pottery class becomes someone you chat with easily by the fourth session and potentially a real friend by the 10th. This progression happens naturally when the environment supports ongoing contact. Shared activities also provide built-in conversation topics that bypass the awkwardness of cold introductions. You don't need clever opening lines when you can simply comment on the activity you're both engaged in. Questions about technique, observations about the instructor, complaints about difficulty levels. All of these create natural dialogue without forcing anyone to manufacture connection from nothing. The activity does the social heavy lifting while you simply show up and participate. Consider what activities genuinely interest you rather than what seems strategically optimal for networking. Authentic engagement attracts people and creates energy that others want to be around. Forcing yourself to attend events you hate generates nothing but resentment and exhaustion. The pottery class works only if you actually want to learn pottery. The running club makes sense only if running appeals to you. The volunteer organization produces connections only if you care about its mission. Make a list of activities you've considered trying. Hobbies you enjoyed in the past but abandoned, skills you've wanted to develop, or causes you genuinely care about. Each item on that list represents a potential environment where supportive people might be found. The wider your interests, the more environments become available to you. Professional and industry gatherings serve different but equally valuable purposes. Conferences, meetups, workshops, and association events concentrate people who share your professional context and understand the specific challenges you face. These environments excel at providing informational and aspirational support. You'll find mentors, advisors, and peers who can help you grow in your career. The key to making professional events productive lies in attending consistently rather than sporadically. Showing up once a year at an annual conference produces business cards that go stale within weeks. Attending monthly meetups for your industry builds recognition that eventually becomes relationship. The regulars at any professional gathering know each other, trust each other, and help each other. Becoming a regular requires nothing more than continued presence over time. Professional communities also exist online in ways that physical proximity used to limit. Industry forums, specialized social media groups, professional networks, and virtual communities allow connection with people you'd never encounter geographically. Someone pursuing a niche career path might find only a handful of relevant peers locally, but discover thousands globally through online channels. The quality of online professional communities varies wildly. Some provide genuine value through thoughtful discussion, resource sharing, and mutual support. Others devolve into self-promotion, negativity, or superficial interaction that wastes time without building real connection. Evaluate any online community by observing before participating. Notice whether members actually help each other or merely broadcast their own content. Check whether conversations have depth or stay relentlessly surface level. Look for signs that real relationships form between members, rather than just transactional exchanges. Volunteer work creates unusually fertile ground for meaningful connections. People who give their time to causes they care about tend to be generous, community-minded, and relationship-oriented, exactly the qualities that make someone a good addition to your support network. The shared purpose of service creates bonds that feel deeper than those formed through purely recreational or professional activities. Volunteering also allows you to demonstrate your own character through action rather than words. People see how you treat others, how you handle challenges, how you show up when no external reward exists. This behavioral evidence creates trust faster than any amount of conversation could. You become known as someone worth knowing simply by doing good work alongside others who are doing the same. Choose volunteer opportunities that align with your values and interests, while also providing substantial interaction with other volunteers. Some roles isolate you. Stuffing envelopes alone in a back room does little for connection building. Other roles place you in constant collaboration with teammates, which multiplies relationship building opportunities. When evaluating volunteer options, consider the social structure as much as the mission itself. Religious and spiritual communities have served connection needs for thousands of years, and they continue to function as relationship incubators for people who participate actively. These communities explicitly value mutual support, often building care networks into their organizational structure. Members watch out for each other during difficult times and celebrate together during good ones. The shared belief system creates common ground that facilitates rapid deepening of relationships. Even those without traditional religious affiliation can find community through secular alternatives that serve similar functions. Meditation groups, philosophical discussion circles, humanist organizations, and other meaning-focused gatherings provide the depth of connection that religious communities offer, without requiring specific theological commitments. Educational environments deserve special attention because they concentrate people actively trying to grow. Classmates in any learning context share the vulnerability of being beginners, the challenge of developing new capabilities, and the satisfaction of progress over time. These shared experiences create natural bonding opportunities. The person struggling beside you with the same material you're wrestling with becomes a comrade in ways that casual social contacts never do. Formal education isn't the only option here. Community college classes, continuing education programs, professional certification courses, recreational skill-building workshops, and online learning cohorts all create these dynamics. Any context where people learn together fosters connection among the learners. Look for educational opportunities that include significant interaction rather than purely self-paced or lecture-based formats. A course with group projects, discussion components, or collaborative exercises produces more connection than passively watching videos alone. The learning itself might be identical, but the relationship-building potential differs dramatically based on structure. Your existing weak ties acquaintances, former colleagues, neighbors you wave to but rarely speak with, friends of friends you've met once or twice represent an underutilized resource for network building. These loose connections often lead to the most valuable introductions precisely because they move in different circles than your close relationships do. Sociologists have documented this counterintuitive finding extensively. Close friends tend to know the same people you know, share the same information you have, and circulate in the same environments you frequent. Weak ties connect you to entirely different networks, filled with people and opportunities you'd never encounter otherwise. The former colleague who moved to a different industry, the neighbor who belongs to organizations you've never heard of, the acquaintance from years ago who now lives across the country, each of these weak ties represents a bridge to new worlds. Activating weak ties requires overcoming the awkwardness of reaching out after extended silence. Most people hesitate to contact someone they haven't spoken with in months or years, worrying that the outreach will seem strange or intrusive. This hesitation is almost always unfounded. People generally enjoy hearing from former connections and respond positively to genuine attempts to reconnect. Craft your outreach around something specific rather than vague catch-up requests. Mention something you noticed about their work. Ask a specific question related to their expertise. Congratulate them on something you saw they achieved, or reference a shared memory that provides context for the contact. This specificity signals that you're reaching out intentionally rather than mass messaging everyone in your contact list. Online environments extend your geographic reach but require different approaches than in-person contexts. The absence of physical presence and nonverbal cues makes building trust slower and more difficult. The ease of connection makes relationships feel more disposable. The sheer volume of potential contacts creates paradox of choice that often results in many shallow connections rather than fewer deep ones. Effective online relationship building focuses on quality over quantity. Rather than collecting hundreds of connections you never meaningfully interact with, identify smaller numbers of people who seem genuinely worth knowing and invest real attention in those specific relationships. Comment thoughtfully on their content. Send private messages that demonstrate you've actually read what they shared. Offer help or resources that might benefit them. This concentrated effort produces far better results than spreading yourself thin across endless superficial interactions. Certain online spaces naturally facilitate deeper connection. Cohort-based programs that move groups of people through experiences together create bonds similar to in-person classes. Small communities with active moderation and clear norms develop cultures of mutual support. Long-running forums where members develop reputations over years allow trust to build gradually. Seek out these higher-quality environments, rather than defaulting to the largest or most popular platforms. Recognizing which specific individuals are worth investing in matters as much as knowing where to find people generally. Not everyone you encounter, even in environments rich with potential, will become a valuable supporter. Some people lack the capacity for genuine connection. Others might be perfectly nice, but poorly matched to your particular needs. Several qualities indicate that someone has potential as a meaningful addition to your network. They demonstrate genuine curiosity about others rather than steering every conversation back to themselves. They follow through on small commitments, suggesting they'll be reliable for larger ones. They speak about other people in their lives with warmth and respect rather than constant criticism or complaint. They show consistency between their words and actions over time. They respond to other successes with authentic enthusiasm rather than competitive deflection. Warning signs also emerge when you know what to look for. People who only appear when they need something but vanish when you might need support will continue that pattern. Those who gossip viciously about others will eventually gossip about you. Individuals who consistently break small promises will break big ones when it matters most. People who treat service workers, strangers, or anyone they perceive as lower status with disrespect reveal their character more clearly than how they treat those they want to impress. Observe behavior over time rather than forming rapid judgments based on first impressions. Some people charm immediately, but disappoint eventually. Others come across as reserved initially but prove deeply loyal once the relationship develops. The patterns that matter only become visible through repeated interaction, which is why environments that provide ongoing contact work so much better than one-time encounters. Pay attention to reciprocity in early interactions. Healthy relationships involve give and take from both sides. Someone who only takes your time, energy, and resources without ever offering anything in return probably won't transform into a generous supporter later. Someone who gives excessively without allowing you to reciprocate might struggle with boundaries that will eventually complicate the relationship. Look for people who seem comfortable with mutual exchange, willing to receive help, and willing to provide it. Positioning yourself to be found by support of others matters alongside actively seeking them out. The qualities that make someone a good addition to your network also make you attractive as an addition to theirs. Demonstrating reliability, generosity, genuine interest in others, and follow-through signals that connecting with you would be worthwhile. People notice these qualities and gravitate toward those who display them. Your public presence, both online and in physical communities, shapes who approaches you. The way you contribute in group settings, the content you share on social platforms, the reputation you develop through your actions, all of these influence which people seek you out and which avoid you. Building a presence as someone helpful, knowledgeable, and pleasant to interact with attracts the kinds of people you want in your network, while repelling those who would drain rather than add value. Take stock of where you currently spend your time outside of work and mandatory obligations. How much of that time places you in environments where meaningful connections can form? How much isolates you from potential supporters? Most people discover significant room to shift their time allocation toward more connection-rich activities without abandoning things they genuinely enjoy. Start small rather than overhauling your entire schedule. Add one activity that places you regularly among potential supporters. Attend consistently for several months before evaluating results. Connection takes time to develop, and abandoning efforts too quickly guarantees failure. Give relationships room to form organically while continuing to show up in environments where formation becomes possible. The locations and situations described here represent starting points rather than exhaustive lists. Your specific interests, circumstances, and support needs will guide you toward particular environments better suited to your life. The underlying principles remain constant. Go where people share your interests or values. Prioritize settings that allow repeated interaction over time. Look for individuals who demonstrate the qualities that predict good supporters, and position yourself as someone worth connecting with. Every supportive relationship in your future currently exists as a stranger somewhere in the world. Your only task is to put yourself in positions where those strangers become acquaintances, those acquaintances become connections, and those connections become the supporters who will help carry you through everything life brings. Chapter 4. Starting conversations that lead somewhere. Finding yourself in the right environment, surrounded by potential supporters, accomplishes nothing if you can't actually connect with them. The gap between proximity and relationship gets bridged through conversation, and most people handle this badly. They either avoid initiating contact altogether, paralyzed by fear of rejection or uncertainty about what to say, or they engage in surface-level small talk that never progresses beyond pleasantries about weather and weekend plans. Meaningful conversation is a skill. Like any skill, it can be learned, practiced, and refined until it becomes natural. The specific words you use, the questions you ask, the way you express interest in others, the timing of your follow-up, all of these elements can be optimized to dramatically increase the likelihood that casual encounters develop into genuine connections. This chapter provides the exact language and approaches that transform strangers into acquaintances, and acquaintances into supporters. Nothing here requires special charisma or extroverted personality. The techniques work for quiet people and outgoing people alike. They work across cultures, age groups, and social contexts. They work because they're grounded in fundamental human psychology rather than tricks or manipulation. The fear that stops most people from initiating conversation stems from misunderstanding what others actually think. Almost everyone assumes that approaching someone new will be perceived as intrusive, awkward, or unwelcome. The reality couldn't be more different. Studies consistently show that people enjoy being approached far more than approachers expect. The average person feels flattered when someone expresses genuine interest in them. The anticipated awkwardness rarely materializes, and when it does, it dissipates quickly and leaves no lasting negative impression. Think about your own experience when someone has approached you with friendly curiosity. Did you feel annoyed? Did you wish they had left you alone? Probably not. You likely felt a small boost of positive feeling. Someone found you interesting enough to initiate contact. This same reaction occurs in the minds of people you approach. They're not judging you nearly as harshly as you fear. Opening a conversation requires less cleverness than most people assume. The obsession with finding the perfect opening line creates paralysis that prevents any opening at all. Simple, straightforward openers work perfectly well because the opener itself matters far less than what follows. Comments about the shared environment provide easy entry points. Observations about the event you're both attending, the class you're both taking, the place you're both visiting. Any of these create natural starting points that require no creativity whatsoever. Saying, "This is my first time at one of these meetups. How long have you been coming?" launches conversation just as effectively as any witty remark could. Questions work better than statements for opening conversations because they invite response. A statement like, "Great turnout tonight," might receive only a nod. The question version, "Have you seen turnouts like this before?" requires actual engagement and begins dialogue rather than broadcasting into silence. Asking for small assistance also opens doors effectively. Requesting a recommendation, asking for directions, seeking a brief opinion on something relevant to the context these requests give the other person an easy way to be helpful, which most people enjoy. The exchange creates a small, positive interaction that can naturally extend into broader conversation. The content of your opener matters less than your energy and body language. Approaching with genuine friendliness, making appropriate eye contact, and speaking clearly enough to be heard signals that you're someone worth talking to, regardless of your exact words. Mumbling a brilliant opener while staring at the floor produces worse results than clearly stating something ordinary while projecting warmth and openness. Moving beyond initial pleasantries requires asking questions that invite substantial responses. Yes or no questions kill conversations by allowing single-word answers. Questions that begin with what, how, or why encourage the other person to share more, which gives you material to build on and signals your genuine interest in their response. Compare the dead-end question, "Do you like your job?" with alternatives like, "What drew you to that field?" or "How did you end up doing that kind of work?" The second versions produce answers with texture details, stories, opinions that reveal something about the person and create multiple threads you can follow deeper. The best conversationalists share a common habit. They listen for the interesting part of whatever someone says and ask about that specifically. When someone mentions they recently moved to the area, the average conversationalist asks a generic follow-up like, "How do you like it so far?" The skilled conversationalist notices if they mentioned where they moved from and asks what prompted the change, or notices something in their tone suggesting complicated feelings about the move and gently explores that. This kind of listening requires genuine attention rather than waiting for your turn to speak. Most people spend conversation time formulating their next statement instead of fully absorbing what the other person is saying. The person who actually listens stands out immediately because such attention has become rare. People feel the difference and respond to it with increased openness and warmth. Following threads deeper creates more meaningful exchange than covering many topics superficially. When someone mentions something that seems important to them, a project they're working on, a challenge they're facing, a passion they hold, staying with that topic rather than jumping to something new honors their sharing and builds connection. You might spend 15 minutes discussing a single subject rather than skating across a dozen. This depth produces bonding that breadth cannot achieve. Sharing about yourself appropriately requires balancing openness with restraint. Revealing nothing makes you seem guarded and prevents the mutual vulnerability that creates closeness. Revealing too much too quickly overwhelms people and triggers discomfort. The right calibration involves matching the other person's level of disclosure and gradually increasing depth as trust develops. Early conversations benefit from sharing opinions, preferences, and light personal information rather than deep secrets or heavy emotional content. Mentioning that you've been trying to learn photography, that you have mixed feelings about the recent changes in your industry, that your weekend involved a surprisingly good hiking trail. These kinds of shares give the other person something to connect with without burdening them with intimacy they haven't earned yet. Pay attention to how the other person responds to your disclosures. If they meet your sharing with their own openness, you can gradually increase depth. If they deflect or change subjects, they may not be ready for that level of exchange yet. Respect their pacing rather than pushing past boundaries they've signaled. Expressing what you're looking for without seeming desperate or transactional requires framing and timing. Blurting out that you need mentorship during a first conversation feels awkward and creates pressure. Gradually revealing your goals and interests over multiple interactions allows the relationship to develop naturally while planting seeds that might eventually grow into the specific support you need. Early conversations should establish common ground and mutual interest. Later conversations can include more direct expression of challenges you're facing or goals you're pursuing. The person who knows you somewhat and has begun to like you will respond far more positively to requests than a stranger would to the same ask. When the time comes to express specific needs, framing matters enormously. Requests that make the other person feel capable and valued generate better responses than requests that emphasize your neediness. Compare. "I'm really struggling and don't know what to do. Can you help me?" with I'd value your perspective on something because you seem to understand this area well. The second version acknowledges their competence rather than highlighting your desperation. Asking for help in ways that make others want to say yes involves several principles. Make requests specific rather than vague. Could you look at my resume and give me your thoughts? Works better than, could you help with my job search? Specific requests feel manageable, while vague ones feel potentially bottomless. Keep asks small initially, and increase only after the relationship has proven itself through successful, smaller exchanges. Offer an easy way to decline without embarrassment. I totally understand if you're too busy. Gives them an out that preserves the relationship even if they can't help right now. Timing your requests shows respect for the other person's circumstances. Asking for a favor when someone is clearly stressed, rushed, or dealing with their own challenges demonstrates poor awareness and damages the relationship. Waiting for moments when they seem relaxed and receptive dramatically increases the likelihood of a positive response. Offering value before asking for anything shifts the dynamic entirely. People who only appear when they need something develop reputations that close doors. People who consistently provide help, information, introductions, or other benefits without immediate expectation of return build goodwill that makes others eager to reciprocate when asked. Think about what you can offer each new connection. Your unique knowledge, skills, experiences, and access all represent potential value. Someone you meet might benefit from an introduction you could make, information you possess, a skill you could teach, or simply your attention and support during a difficult time. Leading with giving rather than taking establishes you as someone worth keeping in one's network. The value you offer doesn't need to be dramatic or costly. Sending someone an article relevant to something they mentioned, connecting them with someone who might be helpful, recommending a resource that addresses a challenge they described. These small acts of helpfulness accumulate into a reputation as a generous person. That reputation precedes you in ways that open doors before you even approach them. Following up after initial conversations separates people who build networks from people who collect forgettable encounters. The person you spoke with at last week's event will fade from memory within days if you don't reinforce the connection. A simple follow-up message transforms a pleasant but fleeting exchange into the beginning of an actual relationship. Effective follow-up happens promptly within a day or two of the initial meeting. Waiting longer allows the memory to fade and makes your message seem less connected to the interaction that prompted it. Quick follow-up signals genuine interest and makes the other person feel that the conversation mattered to you. Reference something specific from your conversation to distinguish your message from generic networking outreach. Mentioning a topic you discussed, a recommendation they made, or something you found particularly interesting about what they shared proves you were actually paying attention and valued the exchange. This specificity transforms your follow-up from person I met once to person I had a real conversation with. Keep initial follow-up messages short and low pressure. Express that you enjoyed meeting them. Reference the specific conversation element. Suggest staying in touch, or, if appropriate, propose a specific next interaction like getting coffee. Avoid long messages that require substantial time to read and respond to. The goal is simply to maintain connection, not to recreate the entire conversation in written form. The method of follow-up depends on context and the contact information exchanged. If you connected on a professional platform, message through that platform. If you exchanged phone numbers, a brief text works well. If email addresses were shared, a short email keeps things appropriately professional. Match the formality and medium to the nature of the relationship and the context where you met. Not every follow-up will receive response, and this shouldn't discourage you. People get busy, messages get lost. Timing doesn't always work. One unreturned message doesn't mean the connection failed. Wait a few weeks and try once more before concluding that the person isn't interested in maintaining contact. 2 unreturned messages probably does mean you should move on, and that's perfectly fine. Not every encounter needs to become a relationship. Moving from acquaintance to genuine connection requires multiple positive interactions over time. The follow-up message initiates this process, but it needs continuation. Finding reasons to stay in periodic contact, sharing relevant articles, congratulating them on achievements you notice, reaching out when something reminds you of them keeps the relationship alive between more substantial interactions. The transition from casual acquaintance to someone who actually supports you happens gradually through accumulated positive exchanges. Each interaction builds familiarity and trust. Each time you provide value strengthens their perception of you as someone worth investing in. Each time they help you and feel good about doing so deepens their commitment to the relationship. Patience matters enormously here. Trying to accelerate relationships beyond their natural pace creates discomfort and often backfires. The person who pushes for instant closeness seems needy or socially unaware. Allowing relationships to develop at their own speed while consistently showing up as someone worth knowing produces far better long-term results. Some relationships will stall at the acquaintance level despite your best efforts, and this is completely normal. Not everyone you meet will become a supporter. Chemistry, circumstances, capacity, and countless other factors determine which connections deepen and which don't. The goal isn't to convert every encounter into a close relationship, but to increase your odds by approaching more people skillfully and following up consistently. Numbers matter. Meeting 50 people and building genuine relationships with 5 of them produces a better outcome than meeting 10 people and desperately trying to make all of them become close supporters. Difficult conversations inevitably arise as relationships deepen. Asking for significant help, addressing misunderstandings, expressing disappointment, setting boundaries. These moments test relationships and determine whether they can handle real weight. Avoiding difficult conversations keeps relationships superficial. Having them skillfully allows relationships to grow stronger through challenge. The key to difficult conversations lies in expressing your own experience rather than making accusations about the other person. Saying, "I felt let down when I didn't hear back about the introduction you mentioned," lands very differently than, "You never followed through on what you promised." The first version describes your experience and opens dialogue. The second version assigns blame and triggers defensiveness. Approach difficult conversations with curiosity about the other person's perspective rather than certainty about your own interpretation. You might have misunderstood something. They might have circumstances you're unaware of. Creating space for their side of the story often reveals information that completely changes the situation. Specific phrases help during uncomfortable moments. "I want to talk about something that's been on my mind," signals that a serious topic is coming without creating alarm. "Help me understand you're thinking about." Invites explanation rather than demanding justification. "I may be reading this wrong, but," acknowledges that your perception might be incomplete. What would be helpful is redirects towards solutions rather than dwelling on problems. The willingness to have difficult conversations separates relationships that can provide real support from relationships that collapse under any pressure. People who can work through disagreements, address problems directly, and repair ruptures become far more valuable supporters than those who can only maintain connection during easy times. Building genuine supporters rather than collecting business cards means investing more heavily in fewer relationships. Depth beats breadth for support networks. 10 people who would actually help you during a crisis provide more value than 100 people who recognize your name but feel no obligation to assist. Focus your conversation energy on people who seem worth knowing and let casual encounters remain casual. Give more attention to follow-ups with promising connections. Invest in developing the relationships that show mutual interest rather than chasing everyone equally. Your conversations over the coming weeks and months will determine the shape of your support network for years to come. Every person you meet and actually connect with represents a potential supporter. Every meaningful exchange plants seeds that might grow into relationships you'll rely on during crucial moments. The words have been provided. The techniques have been explained. What remains is practice approaching people, starting conversations, asking good questions, listening deeply, following up consistently, and allowing time to transform encounters into the genuine connections that will sustain you through everything ahead. Chapter 5. Keeping your network alive. Building a support network requires significant effort. Maintaining that network requires consistent attention spread across months and years. The relationships you've worked hard to form will fade, weaken, and eventually disappear if left unattended. People drift apart naturally not because they stop caring, but because life gets busy and connection requires intentional effort that competes with 1,000 other demands. The good news is that maintaining relationships takes far less time than building them initially. A few minutes of thoughtful contact can keep a connection strong for months. Simple systems can ensure that no important relationship falls through the cracks of your busy schedule. The person who masters relationship maintenance protects their investment in network building and ensures that support remains available when needed. This chapter teaches you how to keep your network vibrant without burning out, how to show up for others in ways that strengthen mutual bonds, how to repair relationships that have gone cold, how to handle the inevitable changes that occur over time, and how to let go gracefully when relationships no longer serve either party. These skills transform a network from a one-time construction project into a living system that sustains itself indefinitely. Most people maintain relationships reactively rather than proactively. They reach out only when they need something, or when guilt about long silence finally becomes unbearable. This approach damages relationships because it trains others to expect contact only during crises or when you want a favor. The friend who only appears when they need help becomes someone to avoid rather than support. Proactive maintenance means staying in touch even when you need nothing. Regular contact without ulterior motive signals that you value the relationship itself rather than just what you can extract from it. People notice this difference and respond with increased warmth and willingness to help when you eventually do need something. The challenge lies in maintaining many relationships simultaneously, without spending all your time on relationship management. Some structure becomes necessary once your network grows beyond a handful of close connections. Without systems, you'll inevitably neglect important relationships while overinvesting in others, leaving gaps in your support structure exactly when you need it most. Creating a simple contact schedule prevents relationships from accidentally going dormant. Categorize your supporters by how frequently you want to touch base with them. Your closest connections might warrant monthly contact. Important but less intimate supporters might need quarterly check-ins. More distant but still valuable connections might require only twice-yearly contact to stay warm. Write these people's names somewhere. You'll actually see them. A spreadsheet works. A recurring calendar reminder works. A simple list in your Notes app works. The specific tool matters far less than consistent use. Whatever system you choose, review it regularly and actually follow through on the contacts it prompts. The contact itself can be brief. Sending someone a message that says, "Been thinking about you, hope things are going well with the project you mentioned," takes 30 seconds and keeps the relationship active. Forwarding an article they'd find relevant takes even less time. Commenting thoughtfully on something they posted publicly signals attention without requiring private conversation. Larger relationship maintenance gestures happen less frequently but carry more weight. A phone call to catch up properly every few months does more than a dozen brief text messages. Meeting in person when possible creates stronger connection than any amount of digital communication. Sending a handwritten note for significant occasions stands out precisely because so few people bother anymore. Balance efficiency with meaningfulness. Not every touch needs to be deep. Sometimes a quick message suffices. But relationships that receive only surface-level maintenance tend to stay at surface level. Periodic, deeper investment prevents important connections from becoming hollow acquaintanceships. Remembering details about people's lives creates disproportionate impact. When you follow up on something they mentioned previously, asking how their daughter's college applications went, how their home renovation turned out, whether they recovered from the illness they were fighting. You demonstrate that you actually absorbed what they shared. Most people experience this kind of attention rarely, and it significantly strengthens their positive feelings toward you. Keep notes if your memory can't retain these details naturally. After conversations with supporters, jot down anything significant they mentioned: upcoming events, challenges they're facing, goals they're pursuing, things happening with their families. Review these notes before your next contact. This might feel mechanical, but the outcome, genuine follow-up on things that matter to them, feels anything but mechanical to the recipient. Showing up during difficult times builds relationship strength faster than any other single action. When someone in your network faces illness, loss, job transition, divorce, or other hardship, your presence matters enormously. The people who appeared during dark times earn loyalty that years of pleasant, casual contact could never produce. Showing up doesn't require grand gestures. Sometimes it means simply sending a message, acknowledging what they're going through. Sometimes it means offering specific help rather than vague availability. Sometimes it means sitting with them in their difficulty without trying to fix anything. What matters is making clear that you notice their struggle and that you care. Specific offers help more than open-ended ones. Let me know if you need anything. Places the burden on the person suffering to figure out what they need and then summon the energy to ask for it. I'm bringing dinner on Thursday. What time works? Removes those barriers and makes accepting help easy. I have Tuesday afternoon free and would love to help you pack. Want me to come over? Gives them something concrete to say yes or no to. Celebrating others' wins matters just as much as supporting them through difficulties. Genuine enthusiasm for someone's success without jealousy, without immediately pivoting to your own accomplishments, strengthens bonds and positions you as someone safe to share good news with. Many people downplay their achievements around friends they suspect might feel competitive. Being someone who celebrates wholeheartedly makes you a preferred confidant for life's highs as well as its lows. Reciprocity keeps relationships healthy over time. Support should flow in both directions, though not necessarily in equal measure at every moment. Some periods, you'll need more than you give. Other periods, you'll provide more than you receive. The overall pattern across time should show mutual exchange rather than persistent imbalance in either direction. Notice when relationships have become one-sided. If you're always the one reaching out, always the one providing help, always the one accommodating the other person's schedule and preferences, the relationship may need recalibration or release. Similarly, if you've been taking more than giving for an extended period, find ways to restore balance before the other person begins to feel used. Expressing gratitude explicitly strengthens relationships more than most people realize. Telling someone directly that you appreciate them, explaining specifically how they've helped you, acknowledging the impact they've had on your life. These communications often go unsaid because they feel awkward or unnecessary. Push through that discomfort. People deeply value knowing that their support matters and that you don't take them for granted. Relationships inevitably change over time. People move, switch careers, develop new interests, enter new life phases. The supporter who perfectly matched your needs 5 years ago might no longer fit as well today. The connection that felt effortless when you lived in the same city becomes harder to maintain across distance. The friend who shared your life circumstances when you were both single might relate differently after one of you has children. Accepting these changes prevents unnecessary suffering. Not every relationship is meant to stay the same forever. Some will deepen with time. Others will naturally fade. A few will end definitively through conflict or changed circumstances. Fighting against this reality exhausts you and often pushes relationships away faster than simply allowing them to evolve. Adapting to changed circumstances requires flexibility about what each relationship can provide. The former colleague who moved across the country might no longer provide practical help, but could still offer informational support about the industry you both work in. The friend who became consumed by new parenthood might be less available for your needs, but could provide valuable perspective if you later face similar life changes. Look for how relationships can continue providing value in new forms, rather than lamenting that they no longer provide value in old forms. Some distance in relationships is temporary. People go through seasons of reduced capacity demanding jobs, health issues, family obligations, personal struggles that limit their ability to maintain connections. The relationship that seems to be fading might simply be in a dormant phase that will end when circumstances change. Give people room to cycle through their own challenges without interpreting reduced contact as rejection. Repairing relationships that have gone cold requires humility and initiative. If significant time has passed since last contact, acknowledge it directly rather than pretending otherwise. A message that opens with, "I realize it's been way too long since we connected, and that's on me," immediately addresses the elephant in the room and prevents the other person from having to pretend the gap didn't happen. Explain briefly why the gap occurred if there's a non-dramatic reason. Life got busy. You went through a difficult period. You lost track of time. Avoid over-explaining or making excuses. The point is simply to acknowledge the lapse and signal that you want to resume connection, not to justify yourself extensively. Reaching out after long silence feels uncomfortable, which is exactly why most people don't do it. They assume the other person will be annoyed, offended, or uninterested. These assumptions are usually wrong. Most people respond positively to reconnection attempts, feeling pleased that they were thought of and that the relationship might resume. The discomfort of reaching out is a small price for potentially restoring a valuable connection. Some reconnection attempts won't succeed, and that's acceptable. People change, interests diverge, chemistry fades. A relationship that once worked might not work anymore, despite good intentions on both sides. If your outreach receives no response or lukewarm response, you have your answer. Move on without taking it personally. Not every connection can be revived, and that's okay. Certain relationships need to be released rather than maintained. People who consistently drain your energy, who take without giving, who make you feel worse after interactions, who violate your trust repeatedly, these relationships cost more than they provide. Keeping them alive out of guilt, obligation, or fear of conflict damages your well-being and takes time away from healthier connections. Letting go doesn't always require dramatic confrontation. Often, the most graceful exit is simply reduced contact that gradually fades into silence. You stop initiating. You respond briefly when they reach out. You decline invitations without providing alternatives. The relationship ends through attrition rather than explosion, preserving dignity for both parties. Some situations do require direct conversation, when the person won't accept gradual fade-out, when you have entangled circumstances that require explicit untangling, when honesty demands that you explain your withdrawal. These conversations work best when focused on your own needs rather than the other person's failings. Saying, "I need to focus my energy differently right now," creates less defensiveness than cataloging everything they've done wrong. Grief often accompanies the end of relationships, even ones you chose to release. You're allowed to feel sad about connections that didn't work out, relationships that couldn't adapt, people who couldn't remain in your life. This grief doesn't mean you made the wrong decision. It simply acknowledges that loss hurts even when it's necessary. Your network will look different 5 years from now than it looks today. Some current supporters will become closer. Others will drift away. New people you haven't yet met will enter your life and become essential. This constant evolution is healthy and normal. A static network would mean a static life, and neither tends to serve human flourishing. Periodic reassessment keeps your network building efforts aligned with your changing needs. Every 6 months or so, review your support structure using the framework from earlier chapters. Which types of support do you now have covered? Which gaps have emerged? Which relationships have strengthened? And which have weakened? This review reveals where to focus maintenance energy and where to invest in building new connections. Your circumstances will shift your support needs significantly. Career transitions demand more informational and aspirational support. Major life changes require practical help and emotional support. Creative projects benefit from accountability partners. Health challenges need people who can provide tangible assistance. Matching your network development to your actual life situation ensures that support remains available when and how you need it. Building maintenance habits now prevents relationship decay later. Small, consistent actions compound over time into strong, resilient connections that withstand stress and distance. The few minutes you invest weekly in maintaining your network will pay dividends for decades in the form of support available exactly when life demands it most. The system sustains itself once established. Maintained relationships provide value that motivates continued maintenance. Supporters who feel appreciated become even more supportive. The network grows stronger through use rather than depleting through extraction. What begins as effortful practice becomes natural habit, then simply becomes how you live. You began this book recognizing that something in your support structure wasn't working. You now possess complete understanding of what support actually means, which types you need, where to find people who provide them, how to connect effectively, and how to maintain those connections for the long term. This knowledge transforms only through action. The relationships that will carry you through future challenges exist as possibilities waiting to be realized through the consistent application of everything you've learned. No one reaches their potential alone. No one weathers life's hardships without help. No one experiences full human flourishing in isolation. The network you build from this point forward will shape your career, your health, your happiness, and your capacity to contribute positively to others. The investment you make in connecting with and supporting other people will return to you multiplied across years and decades. Start today. Reach out to one person you've been meaning to contact. Show up for one friend who's struggling. Express gratitude to one supporter you've taken for granted. Small actions initiated now create momentum that builds with time. The work of connection never truly finishes, and that's not a burden, it's a gift. Every conversation, every act of support given and received, every relationship maintained and deepened adds richness to a life that isolation would leave impoverished. You now know exactly what to do. The people who will help you through everything ahead are waiting to be found, connected with, and kept close. Go find them.